At exactly 11:11 p.m., his heart stopped, and so did everything he thought he knew about life. What followed wasn't darkness, but awakening. He left his body, crossed into another realm, and stood face to face with something greater than himself. No bright tunnel, no booming voice, just truth. In a place beyond time, he was shown every moment of his life, good, bad, forgotten, and the real reason we're all here. What he saw will change how you see everything.
I was 34 years old when it happened. At that time, I was working long hours trying to prove myself in a job I didn't even love. My marriage had been shaky for a while, and I was carrying more stress than I ever let on. I ignored it like most people do. I thought if I just kept moving, kept checking off boxes, I'd eventually feel okay. But I wasn't okay. Everything felt slow and far away. Then, suddenly, I wasn't in my body anymore. It wasn't dramatic. One moment I was in pain and scared, and the next I was floating. Just floating. The pain was gone. The fear too. I was looking down at the scene, watching the paramedics trying to revive me. I didn't feel panic. I didn't even feel surprised. It was peaceful. There was a quietness in the air, but not an empty one. It was full somehow. Full of something I couldn't name. I could see my body, and I knew it was mine, but I didn't feel attached to it anymore. I felt lighter, like I had let go of a heavy load I didn't know I was carrying. That moment, leaving my body, was the most real thing I had ever experienced. More real than life, if that makes sense. I felt myself pulled gently upward, like something was calling me. It wasn't a voice, not really. More like a feeling that I was going somewhere familiar. Somewhere I'd been before, but forgotten. And in that moment, I wasn't scared. I wasn't confused. I just knew I was going home. The moment I left my body, I felt myself being pulled, but not by force. It was gentle, like floating upward on warm air. I wasn't walking or flying. It was more like gliding without effort. I didn't see tunnels or bright lights right away. It was just space, open and still, but not dark. Everything had a kind of soft glow, like the light during sunset, only it didn't come from any direction. It was all around me, like the air itself was light. The first thing I noticed was how calm I felt. On Earth, even on a good day, there's always some tension, something buzzing under the surface. But here, there was none of that. My thoughts weren't racing. I wasn't scared or confused. I was just aware. I knew something huge had happened. I knew I had died, but it didn't feel wrong. It felt natural, like waking up from a dream and realizing you're finally back in your real life. There were no sounds like we hear on Earth. No traffic, no voices, no machines. But there was something else, a kind of music that wasn't made of notes. It was like hearing feelings. I don't know how else to explain it. It felt like love, peace, and safety had their own sound, and I could hear it all around me. It wasn't loud, but I could feel it in me, not just around me. As I moved deeper into this space, I started to see colors I've never seen before and still can't fully describe. They shimmered and moved like they were alive. There were shapes too, but they didn't have hard edges. Everything seemed to flow together, like the world was made of energy instead of objects. The best word I can use to describe it is surreal, but not in a strange or confusing way. It was like everything made sense, more than anything ever had on Earth. I wasn't just seeing this place, I was part of it. I felt connected to it, like I had always belonged here, even if I didn't remember it until now. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I trusted it. I felt completely safe. As I moved through that glowing space, I started to notice something forming ahead of me. At first, it looked like light was bending and shaping itself into something solid, but not in a physical way. Then, suddenly, I was standing in a garden. Or at least, that's what it looked like to me. The colors were deeper and richer than anything I'd seen before, like every leaf and flower was alive in a way that went beyond just being alive. They felt aware. Everything around me seemed to hum with its own quiet joy. There was no sun in the sky, but the whole place glowed with a warm light that didn't cast shadows. The air wasn't really air. It felt more like a presence. I breathed without needing to breathe. I moved without walking. I felt free. There were trees, but not like the ones we have here. Their leaves shimmered with soft gold and deep violet. There was water nearby too, like a stream, but it didn't make noise. It just flowed, calm and perfect. I didn't feel like I was looking at a place. I felt like the place was looking back at me, welcoming me. Then I saw them, people. At first, they were just figures in the distance, glowing slightly. As they came closer, I felt the strongest feeling of recognition, even though I couldn't place any names. They smiled at me with so much love, like I had just come home after a long trip. Some looked like they were from different times, clothes from different eras, faces I somehow knew, but couldn't explain how. I felt no need to question it. I just knew they were part of my soul's story. One of them stepped forward. He didn't say anything, but I knew him. He had the presence of someone I had always known, even though I couldn't remember from where. He reached out, not with his hand, but with his energy, and I felt completely safe. He didn't tell me where I was, but somehow I already knew. I was in a space between worlds. Not heaven exactly, but not earth either. A place of remembering. The energy there was full of peace, but also something more, something deep, like ancient wisdom that had been waiting for me. Nothing felt rushed. There was no time, no pressure, just love. I didn't have questions because I didn't need answers. I wasn't thinking in the way I used to. I was just knowing. And in that knowing, I realized I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Not long after I arrived in that place, I felt something shift around me. The others who had greeted me gently stepped back, almost like they were making room for someone. I didn't see anyone right away, but I felt it, something greater coming closer. The energy in the air changed. Everything grew even quieter, but not in an empty way. It was the kind of quiet you feel just before something holy enters the room. Then it happened. A presence appeared, not in the form of a man or a woman, not anything human. It was a light, but not like any light I'd ever seen. It wasn't just bright. It had depth like it was alive. And this light knew me. I could feel that instantly. Every part of me, every thought I'd ever had, every mistake, every fear, every moment of joy, it saw all of it. And it loved me anyway. The presence didn't speak with words, but I understood everything it was saying. It was like thoughts or feelings were passed directly into my heart. There was no confusion, no guessing. It was perfect understanding. One of the first things I felt from it was, you are known. You are loved. You are safe. And the moment that knowing settled into me, I broke. Not in a painful way, but like something heavy had finally been lifted. All my shame, my doubts, the pressure I'd carried my whole life, they were just gone. Being near this presence felt like standing in the middle of the purest, warmest love. But it was also powerful, like the force that holds stars together. I knew right away this was the source of everything. People might call it God, or source, or the divine. I don't think it cares what name we use. It just is. And being near it, I felt like I had returned to something I had been part of all along. There was no judgment in that presence. None. Just this deep, endless love that didn't care about what I had done wrong. It only cared about who I truly was underneath it all. I never felt so safe, so accepted. Not once in my life had I felt anything close to it. There were no tests, no conditions. Just love like the kind a perfect parent would give if such a thing existed. And in that moment, I knew I was ready for whatever was next. The presence didn't say anything out loud, but I somehow knew what was about to happen. It was a feeling like a quiet invitation that said, it's time. I didn't feel scared. I felt ready, like I had been waiting for this moment without realizing it. Then everything around me shifted again. The garden, the people, the glowing trees, they all faded softly into the background, and I found myself standing in a kind of open space. There were no walls or floor, but I was grounded. In front of me, something appeared that looked like a screen, but not made of any material. It was more like light taking shape, stretching out wide and tall in front of me. Then it started. My life began to play out in front of me. Not like watching home videos. This was different. I didn't just see the moments. I felt them. Every thought, every emotion I had during those moments came back to me. And even more surprising, I could feel what the other people involved were feeling too. Every single interaction had two sides, and I felt both. The first scene was simple. I was a baby, lying on my mother's chest in the hospital. I could feel her love, her exhaustion, the way she looked at me like I was her entire world. Then more scenes rolled by. Me learning to walk. My first day of school. fighting with my little brother over a toy. Every moment played out smoothly, one after another, as if time didn't exist here. I realized it was showing me everything, all of it. It moved in order, like a timeline, but it didn't feel rushed. Each moment held its own weight. Even the small, forgettable ones. Helping a stranger with their groceries, saying something kind to a classmate when no one else did. Those were shown with as much importance as the big milestones. I remember the first time I saw a moment I wasn't proud of. I was a teenager, mocking a classmate behind their back. I had forgotten about it, but the review hadn't. I saw her face, the way her eyes dropped when she heard me. I felt her hurt, her embarrassment. And I felt my own confusion and immaturity from that time. There was no one shaking a finger at me, no harsh punishment, just the truth. It was all there, clear and real. The emotional weight of it started to build, not in a crushing way, but in a sobering one. It was like holding a mirror that couldn't lie. I began to understand how everything we do ripples outward, how one kind word or one careless insult can shape someone else's path, even in ways we never see. I started to cry, not from guilt, but from this deep awareness that I had never had before. I saw that my life mattered, not in the ways I thought it did, but in the ways I never noticed. I felt exposed, but not ashamed. The presence beside me never turned away, never judged. It just stayed with me, holding space for me to see myself as I truly was. And I wasn't even halfway through. After some of the harder scenes, the life review shifted, and I started to see moments I had forgotten, small things that didn't seem important at the time but now felt huge. These were moments of kindness, moments where I had chosen to care, even if only in small ways. One scene that stood out was from when I was in college. I had just left class and saw a girl sitting on a bench by herself, crying. I didn't know her, but something in me told me to stop. I sat down next to her and simply asked if she was okay. We didn't talk for long. She didn't want to share much, but I told her she wasn't alone and gave her a gentle smile before I left. That was it, just a short moment. But in the review, I got to feel what she felt. She had been thinking of ending her life that day. She felt invisible, worthless. But when I sat down, something shifted in her. She felt seen. Just that small gesture was enough to make her hold on a little longer, to believe, just enough, that someone cared. I had no idea at the time, but now I felt the ripple it caused. That moment changed her path. She went on to finish school, start a family, and years later, she helped a student in the same way I had helped her. It was like a chain of quiet kindness passing forward. Another moment I saw was with my grandfather. He was in a hospital, close to the end. Most of the family had gone home for the day, but I stayed. I held his hand while he slept, even though I didn't know if he could feel it. In the review, I saw that he did. Somewhere in that quiet space between life and death, he had felt my hand in his and felt peace because of it. He had been scared to go, but knowing he wasn't alone gave him comfort. Watching these moments, I didn't feel pride, not in the usual sense. It was more like a warm, quiet joy, like I had done what I came here to do, even if I didn't know it at the time. The feeling of love in those scenes was overwhelming. Not the loud kind of love, but a deep, steady kind that filled everything. What struck me most was how often these small things had the biggest impact. A word, a glance, a hand held. The review showed me that none of it was wasted. Every act of kindness lived on, long after I had forgotten it. After the moments of kindness, the review turned again. This time, I was shown the other side, the moments I had caused pain, even without meaning to. Some of them were things I had completely forgotten. Others were things I had pushed away, hoping they'd stay buried. But here, nothing stayed hidden. It all came forward, and I couldn't look away. One of the first scenes was from when I was a kid. I was maybe 9 or 10. There was a boy in my class who struggled to fit in. He was quiet, shy, and dressed differently. One day at recess, some of the other kids started teasing him, and I joined in. I laughed along, repeated something someone else said. I thought I was just being funny, but in the review, I felt what he felt. I was inside his experience. I felt the sting of those words, the heat in his face, the way he held back tears until he could find a corner to cry alone. I felt his loneliness. I felt the moment he started believing something was wrong with him. It was painful, not just emotionally. I felt it in my whole being, like I was wearing his hurt. I want to take it back, to run to that little boy and tell him I was sorry. But there was no going back. I could only feel it and understand what it had done. Another moment came from my early 20s. I had been in a relationship with someone who truly loved me, but I didn't treat her well. I was impatient, selfish, and emotionally distant. I remember breaking up with her through a cold text message. At the time, I justified it. I told myself it was better to rip the bandage off. But in the review, I saw her waiting for that message, hoping it would be something different. I felt the moment her heart broke. The way she questioned herself. The way she didn't sleep that night. The months she spent healing. Again, I hadn't thought it was that deep at the time. But now I could see the pain I had left behind and just moved on from. And it wasn't about punishment. It was about understanding. I was made to feel what others felt because of me. And that did something to me. Something permanent. There were smaller things too. Moments when I was rude to cashiers, snapped at people for no reason, ignored someone who needed help. In life, those moments seemed too small to matter. But here, every one of them played out fully from both sides. I saw the way people carried that energy with them, the way one harsh word could ruin someone's day, or worse, push them closer to giving up. What hit me the hardest was the pattern. I began to see that so many of my actions came from fear, pride, or insecurity. I wasn't evil. I just wasn't aware. I was focused on myself, my goals, my image. And in doing so, I had walked over people without even realizing it. The emotional weight was heavy. I cried, not because someone told me to feel guilty, but because I finally got it. I felt a mix of regret and deep empathy. I didn't want to run from it. I wanted to make it right. But there was no going back. Only forward. The presence beside me stayed silent but warm. I wasn't being punished. I was being shown the truth, so I could learn from it. That's when I said out loud, "I'm sorry. Please forgive me." And the moment those words left me, a wave of peace passed through everything. The pain didn't vanish, but it softened. The presence responded, not with words, but with something even stronger, grace. What surprised me the most during the life review wasn't what I saw. It was what I didn't feel. I expected judgment. I thought there would be someone, some presence, weighing my actions and deciding if I was worthy. But that never happened. No voice condemned me. No list of rules was read out. There's only one thing holding me accountable, me. It wasn't about shame. It wasn't about fear. It was just truth, plain and clear. I couldn't hide from it, and I didn't want to. In that space, truth wasn't something to fear. It was something that freed me. I saw every moment for what it was, and I understood why I did what I did. I saw the fear behind my selfishness, the confusion behind my anger, the longing behind my silence. And I also saw what those choices had done to others. There was no punishment, but there was responsibility. I couldn't explain away my mistakes. I couldn't say, but I didn't mean to. Intentions mattered, but so did impact. And that's what I had never really seen before. How much power every action carries. What made it bearable, even beautiful, was the love surrounding me the whole time. That presence never turned cold, never pulled away. It stayed with me through every painful truth, not to scold me, but to help me see. And I began to understand this wasn't a courtroom. It was a classroom. I wasn't there to be sentenced. I was there to wake up. And what really hit me was this: God, or whatever you want to call that presence, didn't need to judge me. Because once I saw the full picture, I judged myself. Not in a cruel way, but in a deeply honest way. I saw who I had been and who I could have been. And even in the hardest moments, that love never stopped. It didn't deny the truth. It just stayed with me in it. In that space, I realized something I'll never forget. Judgment isn't necessary when truth is met with understanding. After the life review ended, I stood in that peaceful space, quiet and overwhelmed. Not by fear, but by understanding. Everything I had been shown led to one clear truth. Life isn't about achievements or appearances. It's about how we treat each other. That's it. That's what mattered in the end. All the moments I thought were big, job titles, money, being right, winning arguments, they didn't even show up. Or if they did, they had no weight. But the small things, the quiet things, the way I made people feel, those were everything. A smile, a moment of listening, a kind word when someone was hurting, those lived on. I saw how those moments lit up the lives of others, and how those people carried that light forward. I realized we're all deeply connected, even when we don't see it. The lesson wasn't complicated. It was simple, but it was also so easy to miss while living. The pace of life, the pressure to succeed, the fear of not being enough, it blinds us. But now it was so clear. The meaning of life wasn't hidden. It was right there in front of us all along. Love each other. Be kind. Be honest. Be present. Help when you can. Forgive when you can't. And try to understand, even when it's hard. Another thing I saw was how much we affect the world around us. Not just people, but the planet. Everything we do leaves a trace. The way we use our resources, the way we treat animals, the way we respond to nature, it all matters. It all echoes. I saw people driven by ego, by greed, and how that led to destruction. But I also saw people living simply, quietly doing good, and how much healing that brought to the world. The message was clear. Every action matters, no matter how small. I realized that life is a gift, but not in the way I used to think. It's not about getting what you want. It's about giving what you can. It's not about being perfect. It's about being real. We're not here to impress each other. We're here to care for each other. And in the end, I'd understood something that changed me forever. Love is not just a feeling. It's a choice, a way of being. And the more we live in that way, the more meaningful our lives become. That's what lasts. That's what follows us beyond this life. After the review and everything I had been shown, there was a pause. Not in time, because time didn't feel real there, but in movement, in feeling. I stood in that quiet space, wrapped in peace, and I felt like I had come home. Nothing in me wanted to leave. I didn't even think about Earth. That life felt far away, like a dream I'd already let go of. I was finally free of fear, pain, doubt. I didn't miss anything. But then, the presence was beside me again. It didn't speak with words, but I understood immediately. You can go back now. It wasn't an order. It was more like an invitation. A door had opened, and I could choose to walk through it. I didn't say anything right away. I just stood there, thinking, or more like knowing, what it would mean. Going back meant pain again. It meant confusion, stress, heartache. It meant forgetting some of this peace. And yet I also felt something else. I felt my purpose. Not in a grand way. I wasn't being sent back to save the world or write a book or lead thousands. It was smaller than that. Quieter. I felt that there were still things left undone. People I needed to love better. Moments I hadn't lived fully. Lessons that weren't finished. The presence gave me space to feel it all. I wasn't pushed. I was trusted to decide. And in that freedom, something inside me shifted. I knew I had to go. Not because I was forced, but because I wanted to grow. I wanted to live differently. I wanted to take what I had learned and bring it into the world, even if only in the smallest ways. Still, saying yes was hard. As that place began to fade, I felt a deep sadness. Not fear, just sorrow. Like leaving a place that had always been home, even though I had forgotten it existed. I looked back, or maybe just felt back, and silently said, "Thank you. I won't forget." And with that, everything changed again. The peace, the light, the presence, it all began to slip away like mist in the morning. And I started falling gently but fast back into my body, into the world, into the noise and weight of life. Coming back was nothing like leaving. It wasn't smooth or peaceful. One moment I was in that place of light, and the next I was being slammed back into my body. That's how it felt, like a crash landing. I opened my eyes slowly. Everything was blurry, and I couldn't move right away. My chest ached. I heard beeping, voices, and the hum of machines. I was in a hospital bed. My body felt heavy. So heavy. Breathing was strange. My skin hurt. My eyes burnt. Everything that had been light and easy was now dense and sharp. But the real shock wasn't physical. It was emotional. I felt like I had been torn out of something sacred. Like someone had pulled me away from a warm fire and dropped me into cold water. At first, I didn't speak. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't know how. How do you explain something like that? How do you tell people you died, met something divine, saw your whole life, and came back with a new understanding of what matters? I tried, gently, with a nurse who asked how I was doing. I said, "I went somewhere." She smiled like she thought I meant the surgery had knocked me out hard. But I didn't push it. I knew right away that not everyone would understand. The strange thing was, even though I was back, I didn't feel the same. I couldn't go back to being the person I was before. Something inside me had shifted. I felt softer, quieter, not weak, just aware, like I was seeing everything around me for the first time. The people, the light through the window, the sound of footsteps in the hallway. It all felt more real, more alive. That first day, I cried a lot. Not out of sadness, but because I knew I had been given something rare. I had touched something pure, and it was still with me, somewhere deep inside. Life hasn't been the same since. I don't mean in dramatic movie-style ways. I didn't come back with psychic powers or glowing hands. But something deep inside me changed, and it touches everything now. How I see people, how I move through the world, how I speak, even how I sit in silence. Before the near-death experience, I lived like most people do. I chased things. I worked too much. I wanted to be seen as successful, to prove something. I didn't really stop to ask, what is this all for? But now, that question lives at the center of my life. And the answer I found isn't complex. It's actually very simple. Love people well. That's it. Since coming back, I've slowed down. I try to be present with people. I listen more. I care more. I notice things I used to miss. The way someone's eyes change when they're hurting, the small pauses in their voice, the moments that ask for kindness instead of impatience. I've reconnected with family I hadn't spoken to in years. I've let go of a lot of grudges I thought I'd carry forever. I've said, I'm sorry more often. I've said, I love you more freely. Work still matters, but not like before. Now I ask, does this bring peace? Does this help someone? If not, I'll let it go. I'm more aware of my choices and how they affect others, even in quiet ways. I think a lot about the ripples we leave behind, what energy we send out, what we plant in the lives of others. I still feel connected to that place. Not in a constant, floating on a cloud way, but like there's a thread tied to something greater. When life gets loud and messy, I close my eyes, breathe, and I can feel that presence again. Not as strong as when I was there, but enough to remind me that it's real, that it's always been there. Sometimes people ask me if I'm afraid of dying now. The truth is, I'm not. I know where I'm going. I've seen what's waiting. And it's not scary, it's love. Pure, endless love. But I'm not in a hurry. I came back for a reason. Even if I don't always know what that reason is, I trust it. If I had to leave one thought behind, it would be this: everything you do matters. Every word, every action, every silence. Be kind. Be present. Because when this life ends, and it will, you'll see it all again. And you'll realize it was never about being perfect. It was about being real, being loving, and doing your best with the time you had.